Reddit, what is something that happened at a sleepover which you will never forget? Okay, not a sleepover technically, but more of a trip away. My class went to a trip away and the boys slept in one room and girls another. Now, on one of the last days of the week-long trip, one of the boys in my class decided it would be a great idea for all of us to wank together at the same time. So a group of 17 boys wanking furiously in sleeping bags was definitely one of the what the fuck am I doing moments of my life. We were 13, 14 at the time, and that is a moment I will never forget. I had a big birthday party sleepover when I was 11 or 12 and invited a bunch of my friends to spend the night. My mom made me invite the kid from down the road who was in my grade, but I never really noticed him. He was really small and took a lot of medicine. Anyway, he wet the bed that night and was humiliated by everyone there, including me. I saw him on the bus the following week, and I felt bad about what happened. We became best friends and hung out most weekends until the end of high school. He told me that he had a liver transplant in kindergarten and was facing some serious health threats in the future. We remained close, and last summer his liver failed and he passed away in hospice care at the age of 25. TLDR, weird neighbor kid pissed the bed, became best friends with him until his passing. We lost touch after high school, which has happened with most of my old friends. He messaged me on Facebook this time last year wanting to catch up. We chatted for a bit and I told him I would visit him the next time I was in town. He didn't say anything about his failing health, but I wish he had. I would have made a special trip back home to see him. It's been a year, and I've been thinking about him more than usual lately. I miss him a lot. Not particularly eventful or sexy, but when I was in middle school, my friend had a birthday party sleepover with about 8 to 10 girls. Around 10 p.m., we decide to all sneak out and go TP some boy's house. We go and TP the house, then we realize we are lost and don't know how to get back to our house. So we find the closest main road and start walking down it. About 8 to 10 middle school girls in their PJs, so naturally a police officer stops us and asks us what we're doing out so late. Must have been a really awesome cop because we make up some stupid story about looking for a lost cat. We all pile in the car and he takes us back to her house, where we ask him to turn off the lights and let us walk up. I was 8 or 9, spending the night at a friend's house for her birthday. All the other girls were asleep, but I couldn't sleep. I was bored, so I went to the bathroom and started playing with her mom's makeup and hair care products. What's the worst that could happen, right? Well, I get a chunk of my coarse, curly hair stuck in a round hairbrush, and I could not for the life of me get it out, and I was too afraid to go rummaging around in her kitchen for scissors because I didn't want to wake the other girls up. So I pulled out my hair, a chunk of hair, about 3 inches wide. I pulled it out, crying silently the whole time, and then spent the rest of the night picking my hair out of the hairbrush, with blood rolling down my forehead. It was traumatic. My conclusion: sleepovers are dangerous. Staying the night at a friend's house with a bunch of our buddies when we were all in about our mid-teens. We're all sleeping on the floor in this large room, fairly spaced apart, almost zero light. The slightly older sister of the friend whose house it was had been flirting with one of the guys all night, and while we were asleep, she snuck in the room. I think I was the only one still awake. From what I could make out in the darkness, she crawled over to the guy she'd been flirting with, slid under his blanket, got on top of him, and started grinding away. He had the biggest grin the next morning, but would answer, "I'm just happy to be here with you guys," whenever asked. My best friend from ages 7 to 14 was a very tomboyish girl, and one time when I was 11, I was sleeping over at her house. This time, 2 of her attractive female cousins happened to be there for the evening as well. I forgot how it came up, but they started talking about how they had never seen a penis and were asking me to show them. Now, I was a shy kid and raised by very conservative parents, so this took a little bit of persuading, but after an hour of them asking, we went into her bedroom, shut the door, and I whipped it out. Had a party for my 13th birthday with a bunch of mates. We all slept in the lounge room in sleeping bags. By about 2 a.m., one of the guys had fallen asleep, so we decided the only suitable course of action was to mess with him. Thankfully, he was a sleep talker, so this made things super easy. After making him respond to ridiculous comments and making him sing the original Pokemon theme, while we were all trying to laugh silently so as not to wake my parents up, my friend, we'll call him Ben because that was his name, started clicking in his ear. Andrew, the sleeper, said out loud, "Stop clicking your fingernails. Sister's name." which obviously caused Ben to do it more. So, still sleeping, Andrew decides the best way to retaliate is to take a swing at his sister, socking Ben square in the face in the process. It took 4 of us to hold Ben back from killing Andrew, who rolled over and let out a snore, blissfully unaware of the situation he had barely escaped from intact. I was around 7 years old. I had a rich friend named Kevin who could afford all sorts of cool toys because his dad imported and exported them along with other goods. During one sleepover, he brought over one of these remote control fart boxes. Instead of playing with it, we hatched a master plan to sneak it under my parents' bed and unleash its power when they were going to bed. We waited for hours, and finally, when the clock struck midnight, we let it loose. God damn, Alden! My mother. But it wasn't over. We didn't spam. We waited for them to settle and let it go again and again. Finally, we couldn't take it anymore. My parents had heard us cracking up, and my dad, as boisterous with his colon as he is, realized it wasn't his ass. I was like 12. This girl was 13, and she wouldn't shut up about this boy she liked, so I pretended to fall asleep. Give me an Oscar for my acting because she obviously thought I was snoozing, and proceeded to place my hand on her bum. I guess she was pretending I was this guy she wouldn't shut up about, did what I thought was the most convincing sleep role in acting history. You know, with like the content-sounding breathing because you're finding a new comfortable position. I then silently cried myself to sleep. I'm a straight female, for your information. When we were about 15, my buddy stole some alcohol from his parents and invited me over to drink it with him. When I got there, I went to take a shit and was only gone about 5 minutes. When I came back, he drank almost all of it. I called him an asshole and drank that bit that was left, which actually got me a pretty good buzz. We decided to watch a movie, and I noticed he wasn't looking good. Then he puked all over the floor. His mom was downstairs, and I didn't want to get caught, so I started cleaning it up. But he kept puking like 3 other piles. I got him to the bathroom, and he looked at me and said, "Guess what?" I said, "What?" And he started peeing his pants, and then laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I got him back to his bed, and he barfed again. This was like the 4th or 5th pile, and I'd only gotten 1 cleaned up, and not cleaned up very well, as I was kind of drunk. He got out of bed and took his piss-soaked pants and underwear off and was looking for new pants, and I decided that I had had enough. I wasn't going to deal with barf and a drunk naked person who was doing nothing to help the situation. On my way out the door, I told his mom he wasn't feeling well and left. When I got home, my parents knew I was drunk and grounded me. His mom blamed everything on me and called my parents to tell me that I had got her little angel drunk. This is a true story, but you will not believe it is. I was staying the night at a friend's house when I was 8 years old. My foster brother was there too. My friend asks if we want to see a cool trick. We say yes. He lays down on the floor, pulls his pants down, and lifts his feet up to his face. He's wearing tighty-whities. What happens next is so crystal clear in my memory. He farts, and a small spot about the size of a dime begins to darken by his asshole. Then it gets darker, and a hole appears before my very eyes. He burned a hole through his underwear with a fart. See? I told you wouldn't believe me. I didn't believe it either. We told him to do it again. He did. This time I watched very closely. After a minute of him getting a fart ready, he lets loose with the same quiet fart with a short fart sound, and the fresh pair of briefs begins to darken. My foster brother and I are standing by, watching this feat with scientific scrutiny. This dime-sized spot goes darker and darker. It does not look wet. There is no flame, though it looked like I was watching something burn in the sun. You know how the sunlight makes flames nearly invisible? That's how this fart looked by the light of a bedroom lamp. So then the hole forms, and all of this takes place in just 4 or 5 seconds. There is a little smoke, though I may have imagined it. The smell is like a fart, plus hot rubber. My foster brother and I deliberate and request a third demonstration. He says he shouldn't because his mom gets mad when he burns holes in his underwear. It's not aliens or ghosts or Bigfoot. It's a young boy with the ability to burn a hole through cotton underwear with his flatulence. And I swear that it is true. Another odd thing was that his brother came in an hour earlier and offered us toothpaste. When we declined, he shrugged and ate a third of the tube in one squeeze. When I was like 14, I went to my best friend's house for a sleepover. They were twin brothers and their other friend was over there too. In the middle of the night, we decided to all look up porn. So we did, and started all masturbating together. Eventually, we weren't even looking at the porn, but watched each other jerking off our dicks. We all watched each other come, and it was the first time I ever saw other dudes jizzing. None of us ever mentioned it again, but I turned out gay, and the others turned out straight. Maybe. 3rd grade, a bunch of us were sleeping in my friend's living room in a row. I was on the end of the row, closest to the French doors that led to the back deck. I rolled over, away from the group, toward the glass doors, and saw a skull-headed figure lying on its side, facing me, out on the deck. Right up against the door, I froze. Thinking I must be seeing things for what seemed like an hour, I'm sure my eyes were very huge. Eventually, the skull-headed thing stood up and walked away. I'm pretty sure it was my friend's older brother in a mask, but I've never said a word about it to anyone. This was in the 5th grade, which would have been 2003. I was 11 years old, and by that time, I had grown some empathy and had a filter for what I would and wouldn't say in front of company. I also hung around the chicks at my school more than the guys, not because I was a horn dog or anything. I've always had a more feminine side to myself. I'm not gay or anything, just more compassionate and caring. More motherly in my ways, I guess. So I went out to one of my friend's house. Let's just call her, Catalina. That sounds nice. Now I have to explain Kat's backstory. Kat grew up without a father, and her mom worked 7 to 9 every day, so she was alone a lot of the time. I played with her so she wouldn't be. Tonight, like many Saturdays, Kat's mom was sleeping because she worked so long. Around 12 o'clock, she is getting tired, and I'm still not too tired. She gets her PJs on and goes to her room, ushering me to go with her. Okay, you're probably thinking that something sexual went down. It didn't. Something sad went down. Once, when she was going to bed, they just pointed to her room and said a quick goodnight. I thought this was extremely sad and asked her what I could do for her. She wanted me to sing her a lullaby. This made me even sadder. Most of you would say that singing a lullaby to an 11-year-old girl who you see every day in school and play with to be nice is weird. And yeah, it is, but I really didn't give a shit and felt bad for her, so I did that. I sang to her while she fell asleep, all the way holding back tears of my own. After I was sure she fell asleep, I wrote her a note and basically said that I was sorry and that she needed anything, she could give me a call. Then I left. I wasn't going to stay there all night due to the fact that I'm pretty sure her mom wouldn't remember that she invited me over, since I was 90% sure she was drunk and quite stressed. And you don't want to get on the bad side of a drunk mom. One night, my friend and I decided to have a sleepover at her house, which I always thought had a weird vibe to it. Creepy things always happen there. Anyways, that particular night, we decided to watch The Ring at 1 a.m. When the movie was over and both of us were thoroughly freaked out, we decided to put on the Comedy Channel. For some reason, the tape the network was playing had an issue and started playing backwards, and then her phone rang. From the time the movie ended, to the backwards tape, to the phone ringing, it was no more than 5 minutes. We flipped out, but as teenagers, decided we better answer the phone. Turned out to be some drunk dude drunk dialing random numbers. We ended up chatting with him for half hour, had a good laugh, and went to bed. So I was around 11 and at a sleepover at my friend's house. After about a 5-hour Nintendo 64 sesh, everybody is starting to fall asleep. There's around 10 kids in sleeping bags on the floor with pizza boxes, candy wrappers, sodas, etc. Everywhere in between. I was the only one with a cup of water in the group. Anyways, my friend's cat Gizmo is blind. Sounds like it had emphysema and has an issue with its fur where that for some reason clumps together on its head into 2 antennae looking things. No idea. Anyways, said cat decides that it needs to take a nice cat shit. And what better place than the one cup in sight? Fast forward to around 5 in the morning, I wake up really thirsty. I reach over and toss the contents of the cup into my mouth. A combination of confusion and shock takes my common sense away, and instead of spitting it back out, I swallowed half a cup of cat turd. TLDR, drank cat shit. One time, the night before a birthday sleepover in 4th grade, my friend and I watched The Sixth Sense. After it finished, we came up with the fantastic idea of convincing everybody at the party the next night that I could see dead people, and the planning commenced. I spent the next night convincing all of my 9-year-old friends that I could see dead people and took medicine for it, but hadn't taken it that day. I would point to random areas and say I saw a ghost there, and everybody would freak out. Birthday boy was so scared that he started crying and got his mom. Likely one of my favorite parties ever. Oh, you mean that time that my friend from high school jumped from the 3rd floor and fell into a coma? We were having a guy's night, drinking beers, everything was normal. My friend and his cousin decided to light up a joint and smoke some suspicious shitty-ass weed. My phone rang. It was my friend's mom. She wanted to talk to him since his phone was out of battery. He was sitting on the couch and I was heading towards him with my phone in my hand, and when he saw me heading for him, he freaked the fuck out like he just saw some kind of demon or monster or something, and ran off to the balcony and jumped. He hit his head on a tree going down, fell into a coma, and was out for 2 years and a bit. He woke up one day like everything was normal, and he died a few hours later of organ failure. His parents blamed me since they believe I was the one who handed him the joint and all that, and that I was to blame for inducing the fear that made him jump. My conscience is clean, but what I had to go through to not be seen as responsible, police, family, his and mine, friends, colleagues, it was hell. I was at my best buddy's place with a lot of boys from our small 31 kids class in middle school. The first guy, my cousin, to arrive was really horny. My buddy doesn't have a big place, so it was cramped, but my cousin insisted he'd have some alone time in his room and my buddy's computer. After like 5 minutes, he came out of the room with only his boxers and having just bamboozled all over his chest, asking for a towel. My buddy just stood up and exclaimed a big, "What the fuck?" And my cousin went into the bathroom and took my buddy's dad's towel and wiped himself. The 4 other guys from our class came and they saw the porn on the computer and, well, 2 of them sat next to each other with their pants down, beating it like there was no tomorrow. So it was a total of 3 guys in one small room, 2 on the bed, beating their meat, 1 standing next to the bed, watching whatever was going on in there. My buddy's dad's towel was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh, and one of the meat beaters turned out to be gay. He told me one time that he had a huge crush on the other meat beater and watched him instead of the porn. Sorry for the bad English. This was an adult sleepover. A few of us were at a friend's house for a party. My friend Katie brought a date, and his homeboy, who went by the name of Piss, you can't make that shit up. Anyway, Katie wanted to get frisky with her date, so she started pushing me to take one for the team and fuck Piss. I said hell no. Katie ended up getting laid anyway. While I was going down, the rest of us went to sleep in the available bedrooms. I ended up in bed with one of my gay BFFs. Piss wandered into the room and decided to sleep on the floor. Maybe he was still hoping to get some by being in the same room as me? Oh God. About 20 minutes later, gay BFF and I started freaking out, holding each other's hands because we hear the very audible sound of Piss masturbating furiously on the floor by himself. Suffice to say, the next morning was awkward as fuck, and I have never seen him again. I'm late to this party. This will probably never be seen. I'll tell my take anyway. When I was in 7th to 9th grade, a bunch of friends and I used to spend the weekend at my friend's house. We'll call her Z. Starting on Fridays, and we would go home Sunday in the evening. Z's parents were a little strange. Looking back on it, they were pill poppers. They are clean now, but as kids, we really had no idea. We would spend the evening watching movies and playing games on the computer. The one night Z's mom came in and yelled at us for playing the devil's music too loud. It was that I Hate Everything About You song by 3 Days Grace. About an hour later, we went into the living room to use the computer, and all 5 of us girls saw her mom passed out on the computer chair with porn on the screen and a dildo still inside of her. We were all kind of shocked, and we went back to Z's room while Z yelled at her mom. TLDR, turn off the devil's music so I can watch porn.